Welcome, welcome. I'm your host, Kimberly Pinkston, and welcome to Her Story. Tonight, we have a very special guest. Her name is Alicia Richardson. She is the interim Chief Diversity Officer, and who better to help us navigate how to manage our Blackness, okay? So, she's the interim chief diversity officer at SUNY College up in Schenectady, New York. She is all of that in a bag of chips. She received the Capital District Leadership Council on Inclusion and Multicultural Service Award in 2018. She also received the State University of New York Chancellor's Award for faculty service. She's a Master's of Arts in Africana Studies, and she has her bachelor's in the art of English. So, without any further ado, you guys, let's welcome Queen Alicia Richardson. Hey, beautiful. How are you?
Oh, there we go. Let me unmute. I'm good,
Yes,
thanks. How are
yes.
you?
I'm good. I'm good. So this should be fun conversation, girlfriend, okay? Because
Yes,
we would
yes.
really talk about some things and upset the apple cart, okay? So like I told everybody, this is like your expertise. You know what I mean? You deal with diversity, inclusion, and all of those wonderful and difficult things at the same time. So the topic tonight we're going to talk about is like managing our blackness. Mm. Do we have to? But sometimes we should, right? So let's go. How do we, where does that term even come from?
When I was starting to prepare for this and think through some things, just, mulling some things over, I thought a lot about what blackness is and how blackness
Mhm.
shows up, right? So our blackness is how we express ourselves. It comes through in our culture and the way we move and the way we dance and the way we speak, and the way we laugh and the way we tweet, because I love me some Black Twitter, right?
Yeah,
And the
okay.
way we, you know what I mean, the way we get on social media, the way we are, it's
Right.
beautiful.
It is. It
And
is.
it makes people uncomfortable. And and I kept going back to, something that I said earlier to you, in a prior conversation, and think something I say all the time. I'm not managing my blackness. I'm trying to find peace in my blackness. I'm trying to find
Mm.
rest. I'm trying to find joy.
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
trying to find the things and be the things that my ancestors didn't get to be in their blackness. And so for
Ooh,
me, I try to make sure that I'm moving in a space where I am myself wherever I am. And
awesome.
that includes my blackness. And I had a group of students in front of me this week, and I told them the same thing. And I said, look, it's a journey. I said, if you ask 21-year-old me, I would totally say, yes, you have to manage your blackness. You have to know when to say what and how to say what. But me in my 30s, no,
Mm.
I'm not doing it, because you know what? Because at the end of the day, for me, it was I was losing pieces of myself, right?
Yeah.
Was losing pieces of myself as a result. And as one of my favorite phrases, they say, we're losing recipes, right? We're losing things. And when you try to manage your blackness, I think to some degree you begin to allow white supremacy and patriarchy and capitalism take away pieces of yourself.
You do. You do. I mean, and I know growing up like I did, at some point in time, you thought that you needed to
Hmm.
just to get to that upward mobility level,
Yes.
you know what I mean? And then when events of the day or of the world happen pertaining to us, then it's like it's just caught up in you. You can't really say what you want to say because you're trying not to offend the status quo, and
Right.
and you're trying to maintain your balance there, so sometimes you just have to leave and go walk outside and come back
Yeah.
in to get a grip, and all those type of things, so I noticed that I was reading an article where it says the managing of blackness is far more difficult for black men than it is for women,
Hmm.
because those who make it to the middle class are always suppressing who they really are. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? They have
Hmm.
to maintain that walk because you already have the stereotypes that go on, um, what the others believe about us or think they know about us. And then for a black man to even make it to middle management or upper management, mm, I was reading that they're having some internal struggles there.
Yeah, I mean that, Du Bois talks about it, right? W. Du Bois talks about it, that two-ness, right? That
Hmm.
double consciousness. Um, and that understanding of who you are and how society sees you and making a decision about who you're going to present yourself as. And I agree. I do think it is harder for men, because I think blackness and masculinity are often connected with and seen as threatening, right?
Hmm.
So black men can't be too masculine, can't be too black, because they're threatening the way people see the world and the way people see them, right? And the way people understand themselves. So yeah, I have two brothers, and I definitely think that they have to manage their blackness and in a way that allows them to thrive. And that, of course that angers me, that upsets me.
Yeah.
I remember very distinctly, my brothers growing up as athletes and having to make decisions about what they wore, how they dressed, what they had in their car. All of these things are all about respectability politics and making sure that you don't come off as a threat in any given situation because your blackness is threatening. Um, and making those connections is a part of adolescence for us,
Hmm.
right? We know we all have that conversation about who you are in certain spaces with your parents, with your family, with everything, and you learn how to navigate those places. And I think it's important that you do. I don't want to make it seem as though I don't think that um everybody just be who they are wherever they are. I do think that's important. I think liberation, that's where liberation lies. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I do
Hmm.
understand when people are figuring out and learning where to be and how to be in certain spaces. I think
Yeah.
that's important too, because I think it's a part of the journey to your understanding of liberation, right? Because my understanding of liberation in terms of my blackness is not the same as yours,
Right.
right? That's really
Right.
important. It's really important for us to understand, in my mind, that liberation might look different for different black people.
And
Um,
it does, because I think it differs from generation to generation.
mm,
I mean, I grew up in the 60s. So, the way we were taught, we hadn't quite overcome, you know.
yeah,
And yeah, and some of us still had to go through the back door to go to the doctors or to go to the bathroom or drink out of a colored water fountain,
yeah,
of all of these things. So in our teaching, it was like, if you don't have to upset the apple cart, baby, don't do it. You know what I mean? But it didn't. In within all of that, I say, um, there was like my mom who and my dad who insisted that we learn about our history, like I had told you earlier, Swahili, all about the
sure,
Black Panthers, African dance. I mean, because that was the era that I grew up in, so it's different. It was different for us, and so we had that balance where we knew how to per se act with the whites, and then how we could be ourselves when we're amongst our own people, because there was a real thin line there. I mean, I remember us going to school, and when Martin Luther King died, we were escorted to school by the National Guards.
hmm,
You know what I mean? So the difference there, like you and my daughters, they're just like, look, it is what it is, and we're gonna let you know what it is. And that's how it is. And even in that, I admire you guys for that. You know what I mean? Because you're at that place where the ancestors have paved the way that you can be like, look,
exactly.
say, say what you're gonna say, Mean what you're going to say, own what you're going to say, and walk in that truth.
No, I'm very aware of the fact that the reason why I have the ability to walk into a room and be exactly myself is because my mother didn't get the opportunity to, and my grandmother didn't get the opportunity to.
Right,
And that's why
right.
it's so important for me, I think, to do so. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And to
Right.
say, if you are only going to accept me through a lens that, in a way that makes you the most comfortable, I'm out of here. Right? And that in of itself is a privilege. And I
See?
know that, right? Like, I understand where I'm coming from. I understand that my understanding of not having to manage my blackness is a privilege in and of itself. That's not
Yes.
wasted on me. And
Right.
so that's why I understand when people feel as though they have to. I get it. I get that. But in the meantime, I'm be myself because my grandmother didn't get to and my mother didn't get to. And if you don't
Right.
like it, that's too bad. I'll find somebody who does. And I think
Yes.
that's really interesting part of it too. There are workspaces, there are, spaces, because I think people tend to think that they have to manage their blackness the most in workspaces, right? Where they're getting paid.
Yeah,
Right?
but
Like
you
that's
know
what they feel
what
like
else?
that's where they have
Right.
to manage their blackness the most. Um, but for me, I'm thinking, you know what? And I understand, trust me, I understand it's coming from a place of privilege. If
Right.
you don't like me the way that I am, I can go someplace else,
There
right?
you go.
If you are asking me to show up as someone that I am not, and you don't understand how exhausting that is, you don't understand how that's picking away at my soul, you don't understand how that affects me mentally, then
Right.
I'll find some place that will allow me to be exactly who I am.
Exactly. There you go. Or, create your own table and sit down
Right.
yourself.
Right. And that's the lovely thing about living in this time. So many Black people are creating their own tables, are creating their own spaces where they
Yes.
get to be exactly you know what I mean, who they are.
Exactly.
It's
I
lovely.
mean, and those are the options, and a lot of us are opting for that choice,
Right.
to be free and to be able to speak freely and say exactly what you mean. And it's okay that you feel the way that you feel. But my thing now is with the turn of the tides, it seems like, politics or politicians or whatever they are trying to take us back to Jim Crow era, especially with, children being taught in school that they
Yeah.
were not, from enslaved people, but they were involuntary, involuntarily relocated.
Yeah.
Girl, I
Right,
nearly
right, right,
passed
right.
out when I heard that, and so I wonder and I worry about the managing of the blackness with the kids, because don't think they don't know the truth. And so what happens when they decide to speak truth to power?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I mean, it's just like it has a serious trickle down effect when it's the black men, it's the black women, it's the black kids. Imagine going to school knowing that all these years before the crazies got in office, that your ancestors were enslaved, and now they weren't enslaved. They were involuntarily relocated. So
Right.
what does that mean? Because kids are going to ask that question.
Right. Right. The first thing I thought of was anger, right? The first thing I think about is anger.
Oh yeah.
And um how so many people, so many Black people in so many spaces feel as though they have to manage that.
Hmm.
And how, as a child, if I were in a space and I heard somebody talk about the fact that my ancestors were enslaved, and that it was, involuntary, or some obligatory
Foolishness.
term, that, you know what I mean, that's just ridiculous. My first instinct would to be is to be angry and to
Right.
express that anger.
Right.
um I think when we don't, again, we are losing something. And I wonder about what that looks like. I wonder about what that looks like in the classroom. I wonder about what that looks like, with your friends. I wonder about what that looks like in general. But what I do know is it has to be done.
Yeah, but yeah, and I'm there with you on that, because I often wonder what that looks like. I mean, the undoing of the true history is to make white children feel more
Better.
comfortable so they don't feel bad. But what about the black and brown kids who know the truth?
Right.
How are they supposed to feel when their parents and their grandparents and great grandparents, when the stories have been passed down from generation to generation, so what, their whole history is a lie?
Yeah.
I mean, and and are they sent to the principal's office because they disagree with what you're teaching them? Then we have a whole nother can of worms that would deal with. You know what I mean? Because they
Yeah.
know the truth and you're trying to tell them that that's not how it
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah. That's
You know,
really
how for a
scary.
kid to manage being black when they should be able to be a black kid?
Yeah.
You, you
Yeah.
know, it's disturbing. It's
It is very
disturbing.
disturbing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's like nobody's really, looking at this as a whole. I mean, it's enough for grown black people, and believe me, girl, growing up and sometimes having been the only black person in the office because I was that token, you
Mhm.
know what I mean? And tiptoeing around, and then they don't understand the code, so that was good because you wouldn't know when you were being read or not because you didn't know what I was saying. You just said,
Mhm.
"Oh, you're funny," right?
Mhm.
You know what I mean? But and then you've got kids now that you're trying to take them back to that era. I mean, I think that this trying to manage the blackness is just a little too much. It's just like we should all be say it loud. We're black and we're proud, and we should be able to do and speak freely in a world where other people understand that they're not the only ones in existence.
Yeah, of course. I have nieces and nephews, and I worry about that day that they challenge the teacher and say that's not true. It's just simply not true, and the way you're presenting it is not the reality of the situation. And then what happens? And then are they in trouble because of the way that they did that versus the fact that what they're saying is the truth, right?
Right. And are they expelled?
Right.
Because they're 5 times more likely to be expelled than a white kid
Sure.
just on regular BS, but challenging the teacher is just like, oh my God.
You know, I know a lot of my friends, a lot of the women that I grew up with, because
Mm-hmm.
I went to a very multicultural, diverse school,
Mm-hmm.
in high school and elementary. And one of my good friends decided she wasn't sending her kids to public school. She just wasn't doing it. Because of what is really happening to my child in those spaces, right? What are
Right.
they actually being taught? Are they being taught about themselves? Or are they being taught about themselves through a particular lens that, you know what I mean, that places them in a particular space? And she really set her children into more Afrocentric, an Afrocentric understanding of the world through
Yes.
through education. And it's just setting that foundation, I think, was
Right.
key. When I was growing up, yeah, no, none of the education I received was specific to my blackness. But my parents went out of their way and they made us watch documentaries and we talked about it and we discussed what happened. And we had a clear
Right.
understanding of all of the different movements over time. That was my parents felt it was their responsibility to make sure that we knew that because the schools weren't going to do it.
Exactly. I mean, and what is the thing about Black History? The shortest day of the month? I mean,
Yeah.
the shortest month of the year?
Mhm.
Seriously?
Mhm.
And Black
Mhm.
History is every day?
Mhm.
I,
But
I mean,
relegating it to a month makes, it's a to appease, right? Because Black History Month was originally a week. And it was originally set up as sort of we need to start talking about our history. We need to start understanding our history, right? And then it
mhm,
was expanded to a month and it was discussed on a larger scale. It's important, but why is it that it's another version? It started off with a very sound reason, is what I'm trying to say. It started
right,
off with a very clear reason, understanding we need to spend time better understanding our history because they're not going to do it. We need to
right.
focus in on this. But it's been commercialized, commodified, right? And really, it's about selling stuff and about getting speakers and about these things that are so it's they're important, right?
True.
But it's also a level of othering, right? We're the
Mm,
other. We're
yes,
other than. Our history is separate. Our understanding of the world is separate. I see Black History Month as a celebration, and that's what I spend a lot of my time. I don't talk about, you know what I mean? I try to focus on joy, and because that's
yeah,
radical for us, right? To be
it is.
joyous is a radical act for Black people. And so try to spend a lot of time on that. But in reality, We should be talking about these things all the time. Just the same as we
Right.
should be talking about Native Americans and, indigenous
Exactly.
peoples all the time.
Right.
But
It should be part of American history.
right, but this is all of these things were in response to a education system and in a society that excluded, right? So we had to say, we need it. Look, we need a week. We need some time. We need a month. We should be looking at these things. We should know these things. And now you're not including them and you're not going to.
Right.
Then that's a part of a much larger structure. So here we need this time. We need this space.
Well, it's going
Um,
to be interesting to see how this space adapts to what they call Black history as critical race theory.
yeah. Yeah. Which is just, just it's just outright ignorance, right? Like that's not even
It
what it
really
is.
is.
It's just
It
straight
really
up
is.
ignorance.
Ignorance. It is. It is.
Um, it's the most disturbing thing of it all is deciding that that's what this is. The term that already has a definition that we all understand what it actually is, and then making a decision about what they think it
They think
is,
it is.
and
And
then
that's what
railing
they run with.
against it without
Yeah.
really understanding. It's
Oh,
ignorant. It's the height of ignorance.
it
Truly.
is. Because, girl, they've changed the rules down here with the kids learning in Georgia, where they cannot teach CRT. I was like, first of all, that's the most ludicrous thing I've ever heard. You didn't even know what CRT was
Hmm.
until you read, what's the sister's name? Nicole, who wrote the 1619 Project, and you got all bent
Yes.
out of shape about that. And then you decided to run with it, but you never decided to talk to the people that I think it's a black woman and this man. I can't
Yep.
remember their names, but I've seen them on TV always talking about the history of it and how they came up with critical race theory, which is, what they teach usually in law school. But
Yeah.
I was just like, this is insane, and everybody is afraid of anything black, but everything you do is black. Your music, your movement, your swag, your rhymes, everything you do is
Yeah.
black. Your commercials used to hate rap music, and now every time you see a commercial is one
Yep.
of them.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's an evolution, but we're good for entertainment purposes. But what else?
You want the
Basically,
rhythm, right? You know that quote,
right?
you want the
Not
rhythm and
the
none of the
rhythm, not the
blues.
rhymes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
that's
Mhm.
it. That's it.
But it's all in response to people waking up and making decisions that they're no longer going to see the world the way someone else wants them to see it. That's really what it is, right?
Mm,
People waking up and saying, this isn't right.
right.
And our children should be understand the truth of this, and we should be looking at our policies and practices and procedures and thinking about things differently. And people are like, but wait a minute, I'm going to lose something, right? This is all about loss. This is all
It
about
is.
loss,
Right.
right? In
Right.
terms of white supremacy and in terms of hierarchy, it's about loss. I'm going to lose something. I'm going to lose my place in this food chain if you start to move things around, right? That's the reality. That's the truth
Oh,
of
oh,
it.
oh, it is. It is. And they're starting with, because they figure if they can control white women, they're not even worried about the black. You know what I mean? So that's where they're starting, with the abortion rights and blah, 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 and shut it down. And I even heard one man made the most ludicrous comment in the world, this politician. He said, and women really don't need to have the right to drive.
That's I mean,
And I was just like, seriously? What? Were you abused by your mom when you were little? What
so
happened?
depressing. It's so
It is.
otherworldly. It's so otherworldly. It's so
I
hard
mean,
to
some of
take
the stuff
in.
they say doesn't even make sense. You know what I
No.
mean? At some point, you just have to, it's sort of like I have to quote Forrest Gump, stupid is as stupid is.
But you know what? It does make sense. It does make sense because if you think about the evangelical Christian right, this is exactly what they want. A
Right.
return to a time where women were in the homes and men were out, you know what I mean? White men in particular were out making the money and supporting it's a return to a time in which they were the center of it
Mm.
all, right?
Yes, and creeping in the back door with the sisters, right?
Always, but
But
that's
we can't
always the
talk
case,
about that.
right? No. That's just always the case, right?
We can't talk about that. You know?
we will we will pretend like that is not a thing,
Right,
right?
because So you're taking us back to, what was it, 3/5 or 1/5 of a person or 3/5 of a person that we were, and when you initially wrote the Constitution, that we really weren't all that. So is that where you're supposed to take us to? Because it's too late. The genie's out the bottle,
It
and we're
totally
not
is.
going back. You
I think
know.
that's but I think that's a really it's really important to really think about it that way, because I think our instinct, when I talk to my friends, we're like, this is crazy, this is insane. You know what? It's not. If you place it within the context and you understand how these structures work together, how patriarchy and
Yes,
and capitalism and all of these things work together, then it makes complete sense. It makes complete
it
sense.
does. It does. It does when you put
You
it
know?
that way.
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
makes complete sense.
yes, because
Um,
control. Not being the dominant, the alpha male, is probably very disturbing and nerve wracking to them. You've got your kids who talk back. They start that at the age 3. So you know what I mean. When
yeah.
black moms give a look and be like, you know, there's just it just keeps going. It keeps going. I mean, so I mean, you just feel like you're just all out of control. And so if you follow the Old Testament
Mhm.
and live directly by that, and you're supposed to basically do the kitchen and the bedroom, and do as I say,
Yeah,
as I do. And I should be able to do whatever I want, whenever I want, with whomever I want, as long as I make sure that you are taken care of. At least you have a roof over your head.
yeah.
Period.
And
You
that,
know?
the truth of the matter is, if you really want to understand it, those situations were always rare for Black households, right? That's a very, mom, dad, picket fence, 2.5 kids, that was never meant for us. You know what I mean? That was never about us, right? They actually had government, they had laws, they had structures to make sure that didn't
Didn't
happen,
that happen? That's why
right?
they redlined everything.
Exactly. Not only that, right? And that's why, I like to talk a lot about, womanism versus feminism, and how
Mhm.
really, that never looked the same for us. We sought it, we wanted it because we thought it was our path to more, right?
Exactly.
And to
And
stability. And I
acceptance.
get that, right?
And more
But
importantly, acceptance, because at that
yes,
time,
you want
we just
in.
wanted to be part
You
of
want in the house. You want in the
it.
house, right?
Yep.
And I get that. But Black women were always at the core of the families, of Black families, because they had to be.
Yeah, and that started during slavery time when they were using the men to breed. And even though he wanted to stay with his family, he was dragged off to have more babies because that would be better workers or
Right.
whatever, and then move him on. And that was his job.
There's a
So
long,
once they
long
became
legacy.
free, it stuck. It stuck that I'm not
Right.
supposed to just be here, here, here. You know what I mean? Because that's all they've known.
It's a long, long legacy of that,
It
right?
is. It is. It
And
is.
our
It is.
families don't look the same in some instances, right? They might not look the same, and there's a lot of shame that's connected with that. There's a lot of, you know what I mean? In some instances, a lot
Yeah.
of trauma that's connected with that. But it all comes down to centering whiteness and making a decision that your response to centered whiteness is not to manage your blackness. So I'm gonna bring it back to that, right? Your
Exactly.
response to centered whiteness, to under your understanding of the world through a white lens, is not about managing your
To your
blackness.
blackness, right? It's
And I
about
also
being black,
being black
who you
and
are.
staying black,
Black. Right. Oh, that's
right?
another. That's
And
another topic,
also, right,
Queen.
that is a whole other topic. And
Woo!
also, right, and understanding that blackness doesn't look the same for different, you know what I mean? It's not the same. My
Exactly.
blackness doesn't look like
It's
your
not like
blackness.
you are. Right.
Trans blackness doesn't look the same,
That's same.
right?
Right.
Lesbian blackness doesn't
Blackness
look the
doesn't look the
same.
same.
Christian, they don't look the same, and that's perfectly acceptable, and that's perfectly fine. How
Right.
I decide to stay black is my business,
Right. Right.
right?
That's
And how
it.
you decide to be black and how you decide to manage that is your business.
Right.
But what I'm telling you right now is for me, I'm like, look, you better seek the peace you need in your blackness, because you're not gonna find it anywhere else, and they're not gonna give it to you.
No. No, you're not. You're not. So there is no need in you trying to be something that you're truly not meant to be. I tell everybody, God made us all like ice cream. There's a flavor for everybody. And that's how that goes. So it's like,
And I think, and I think we have to be careful that we don't hurt each other with,
yeah, that was my
you know
next
what I mean?
thought.
We said that before. I talked to you about that before. We
Yeah,
we hurt each other. Look at her. Look at her over there being ghetto and loud and silly. Look at that. She ain't gonna get nowhere. She ain't gonna get nothing. Look at that.
right, right.
We hurt
We say
each
it.
other,
We
right?
do.
We set our standards based on what the next black girl looks like or behaves like, without realizing they deserve to be respected however they show up. However they show up, they deserve to be respected,
Yeah,
as
yeah.
do we.
True. This is
Because
true.
when we start to harm each other through this lens, we are again centering whiteness. We're doing the work for them.
We do. Yep, we are. We are. Because I mean, as women, that seems to be a big thing. She's a little too ghetto. She's not this. She's not that. Oh, look at her. She thinks she's cute. She thinks she's better than. I mean, just this, just stupid stuff.
Yeah.
Because like I said, we all bleed red blood. And all of us have our own. There's something unique and special about every last one of us, despite what we think about what's wrong with whoever. So what if she's loud? Maybe her voice is her gift.
I mean, you talk about managing blackness. I remember going to a session. Um, I went to it was a New York State session on James Baldwin, who's like my favorite
Hey, oh,
author, right? Like
oh,
he's
oh,
just
I'm
like
not your
my
Negro.
favorite,
Yes,
favorite
yes.
author.
Everybody
And
loves him.
oh, James Baldwin is the best, and because he was so radical and he was so out loud about
He
everything, it was
was.
it was beautiful and it was amazing. And it was a session, and we were talking about we were going to implement sessions on our different campuses or anywhere where we were reading
Hmm.
James Baldwin's work and talking about it, right, and talking about it as a community. And we're in this room and we're talking about blackness and we're talking about what it's like to be in different spaces. And I raised the point. I said, you notice, I found myself being in spaces and saying, "Hello, my name is Alicia Richardson, and I'm from such and such a," and and how even that, right, managing my tone of voice is about
There you
managing
go.
my blackness.
Right.
And once I realized that, I was as loud as I wanted to be wherever I needed to be right? Because it's exhausting. It's exhausting. Can't be too loud, can't gesture too much, can't, wear my hair too much to the left. You know what I mean? Too big, got to
Right.
make sure I'm dressed just right. What are we really doing to ourselves?
Right.
In the name of what?
Girl, I had my neighbor say to me one day, she says, "What happened to your hair? It's I said, "It's beautiful." She's like, "It's not straight and curly anymore." I said, "No, it's not. I like it like this." Of course she was white. But I'm telling you, when I tell you, Alicia, she harped on this for like 20 minutes. She just couldn't understand. And here's this 80-year-old woman probably having flashbacks when she sees this afro.
Uh-huh. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I was just like, mm. And I really started digging it even more. I was like, oh, well, she's a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because now what I tell, and I'm brutally honest with it when it comes to the whites. I'll say if they're uncomfortable, I'm like, oh, you're having your first experience being black. Yes, you are. You are. We've
Yeah.
been like that for centuries. You
When
know.
I'm yeah. Yeah, when I'm giving a session or I'm giving a training and, we're discussing things and people start to shift a little bit. And I say to them, I say, because it's not enough to just be uncomfortable. You have to interrogate why you are uncomfortable. That's where the growth happens. That's where the learning
Mm,
happens. So I would say
yeah.
to them, feel what you're feeling, understand what you're feeling, and then interrogate it. Don't just say, oh, this is uncomfortable. I'm going to get up. No, why am I uncomfortable in this moment? What about this is making me question things? Why? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? And why? If you're not
Right.
willing to do that kind of work, I really don't want to have anything to do with you, frankly. Because that, no, seriously, because that's the work we need as a society. If you're just gonna
Right.
be, just fear the discomfort that's connected with interrogating and having someone tell you about yourself to your face, then I don't have any
Mm,
time for you. Listen to
right.
what's being said. You feel uncomfortable, sit in it, stop, think, think it through. And if you have to come back to it later, because for me, I'm constantly thinking about these things. I'm constantly thinking about my experiences. You might come back to it later, but sit for a moment in that discomfort and interrogate it a little bit.
Yeah, and ask yourself seriously. Okay, but why am I uncomfortable? What is it that makes me uncomfortable? Is it the way they're looking? Is it something they
Hmm.
said? Is it the silent gestures? What is it that is making me uncomfortable? Make me feel like I don't belong.
And that's not just for white people, that's for black
For
people
black people
too.
too. Yeah, because we
Because,
can understand.
I remember one of my friends telling me, she was like, when I decided to go natural, she was like, it was my black boyfriend who told me he didn't like it and that it wasn't beautiful. She was like, it was the white men who were like, you look really nice. That looks really good on you. She was like, it was the black men who were saying, I don't like that. I don't, and so it
And
comes
she's
to,
right. She's right.
okay.
She's
And
right.
it comes to such deeply internalized racism and hatred that we never stop to interrogate, right? We
Right.
never stop to think about why we think straightened hair is
It's
prettier.
beautiful.
We
Right.
never stop to think about it. We just did it, and that's just what you know what I mean, what happened.
Right.
Right? Now,
Right.
I've done it because on an intellectual level in grad school, I spent a lot of time talking about hair. It was the reason why I went to grad school because I wanted to better understand how our hair is connected to our
Oh, no.
oppression and our liberation. Right? Like I wanted to
Exactly.
understand it better. And so hearing people talk about it and say, black men in particular, I don't really like that. But why? Right? Like, but are you interrogating that? Are you thinking that through a little bit? Are you saying that aesthetically, the hair that grows out of a black woman's hair is unattractive to you in its natural state?
That says a whole lot right there. That says a whole lot if you're uncomfortable with that because what grade is his? you
Right,
know,
right.
why are you uncomfortable with your blackness?
So then think about that, right? So then think about how whiteness is connected to femininity. Right?
Mm.
So then you start thinking about how it's okay for black men to have dreads and to have their hair a certain way in certain circumstances and whatever. Because then that gets complicated too, right? Because then it's not. In corporate situations, some people feel like they can't have their hair any way they want to, particularly men. But when you
Hmm.
start to think about it, femininity gets caught. Are you feminine? Are you attractive? And is that attractiveness in relation to your proximity to whiteness? I love
Girl.
this stuff. Let me tell you something. I can talk about this stuff all day.
Yes, yes. And see, and that those are the kind of conversations that me, you, my sister, we have all day,
Yeah.
every day. Like, but why is that? Why are you uncomfortable? Why are you thinking that way? And I've often felt that way about, some brothers who will only date white women, but and I'm just like, not that I'm interested in you, but I'm just curious to know why. And your mother is
Yeah. How
black?
did you get there?
Yeah, I
How
mean,
that happen?
what? Because it opened some doors for privilege for you
Right.
for now, for now, particularly athletes, for now, you know?
Or is it okay for a woman who is your mother to be black and complete in her blackness, but not the woman who you go to bed with at night? Who you're attracted to, right? So are you feeding into your understanding your and so that's a really important part too because a lot of people don't understand the mammy, you know what I mean? They don't understand those
Mm.
stereotypes. They don't even understand that they're perpetuating them, right? So is it okay for your mother who washed your clothes and who fed you and who took care of you to be a black woman, but not the woman who is going to take care of your children and birth your children and take care of your home? right? Stereotypically,
Come
right?
on, girl. Come on. We said this would be fun, did we not? And it all comes back to what? Managing your blackness,
Yeah, understanding
or
your blackness. Yeah,
understanding it really is the key. Understanding it.
yeah.
I mean, you need to learn to be comfortable in your own space. And when you're uncomfortable in your own space, you need to take time to figure out why.
Why? What are the
Why?
origins of that? Where did that come from?
Right, right.
Right? That's all I ask. Personally, that's all I ask. And if
Yeah.
at the end of the day you come down to, I'm not uncomfortable or this is just whatever, then fine. But if you've done the work and you've actually started to think through the way that these structures and these systems impact how you see yourself and how you view the people who look like you around you, I think that's one
Mm,
of the most damaging things. Um, you know, Colonization, white supremacy,
girl.
damage. I mean, so deeply damaging. It erased. I saw this tweet the other day. That talked about it. It erased cultures. It erased traditions. It erased all of those things. The love that we have for ourselves. It erased them from so many groups of people.
And
Right.
I thought about that too because I was sitting here thinking one day, and I was trying to before I came up with this, and I said we are the only people who don't know our own languages. I mean, think about that. We're African Americans, and we do not know our own history. It's so scattered to try to put together your family tree to figure out where everybody is and who they were. But I look at this stuff on Ancestry and I see these commercials and their trees are just nicely done and it's all organized, but not us. We can't find us, which is sad, truly, truly sad. You know, I think you froze on me, girl. Okay,
Oh, there
there
you
you go.
go. There you go.
You're
You're back. You went
back.
away. You went away for a minute.
Well, see, so did you. So I was
Yeah.
just like,
I was like, what
where's she? Yeah, so I mean, it's just it's sad that we don't know who our people are. We have to really, really dig deep to find our history. Our children aren't taught our language, a native language. Just like some of the Italian kids, they know their heritage. Jewish kids, da 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 da. The Swedish, German, da 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 da. And they have their little celebrations within the month in their communities. I mean, we just got Juneteenth,
And
and we
even
don't
that
want to
to
go there.
me is
Right.
highly performative, and
Mm,
you know what I mean, and was a gesture of appeasement.
and it was.
And look,
Because
it's an important thing. It
it
really
is.
is. It's important for us to understand. It's important, you know what I mean, moment to stop and think. But really, we asked for everything, and that's what they gave us. We're asking for equitable treatment. We're asking for reparations. We're asking for justice, and
Right.
we get a day on a calendar. And look, thank you. That's nice. But what about the actual tangible things that are going to impact the way I go through this world in this country,
Yeah. What
right?
about affordable housing?
What about
Because
that?
now you've got all these people that have bought up everything, and kicking renters out their homes, and the cost of an apartment, a decent one, is up in the thousands of dollars. I mean, you have permanently set it up so that there is always a poorer class,
That's
and
right.
they are black.
That's right.
And they are black. And that is very disturbing, very disturbing, you know.
I used to tell people that all the time. I'm like, you have to understand. I was like, capitalism does not allow for everyone to be okay. That's not how capitalism works. Somebody's got to be struggling. Somebody's got to be poor. Somebody has to need. That's how it works. That's the structure of it, right? So how is it that we have become the most economically, disenfranchised in general? Politics and slavery, right? And racism and discrimination. That's how. And how it's so deeply ingrained in all of our structures, right? It's not just about the overt racism. It's not about the racism in your face. It's the racism and the inequity and the structures
It
that
is.
create barriers for you to get to the things you need to be more successful, right?
Exactly. Because a black person can have the same exact credit score as someone who is white. They can get in, move up, they work with them. The rest is it's a denial. Let me tell you, there's a movie on YouTube called White Like Me.
Hmm.
They interviewed all these white people from different backgrounds or whatever, whatever, and they were talking about racism. and and they were all saying in their own way, yeah, but the lowest person on the whole totem pole, it's the blacks, it's the Mexicans, and then the blacks are always going to be the lowest because they want too much.
Hmm.
And this one woman said that she and her husband both were unemployed for years. The bank gave them a loan to buy a house.
Systems and structures.
I, Me and my husband nearly fell out. I'm screaming at the TV. I'm like, what?
Systems and
And and
structures
and
that
and, and
privilege.
she said, no, they'll never do that for black people. That why would they need a house? They don't have a job.
Hmm.
But it didn't. She couldn't relate to the fact that her husband hadn't had a job for years. They just went to the bank and they signed the papers and gave them the loan.
And
No
see,
money.
and what that makes me think of again, and what I'm going to go back to is something I said earlier, which is that the fact that my parents had to deal with stuff like that, and that my grandparents had to deal with even worse, and
Mm-hmm.
that um they had to see themselves through these lenses and had to change who they were in certain circumstances in order to get what they needed is another exact reason why I refuse to do it. Why I refuse to I owe it to them to
Right.
be complete in my blackness
Yes.
whenever and wherever I can. I do. We do. We owe it to them.
We really do. We really do because the stuff that they went through. I remember my grandfather used to tell us stories that if a white woman walked past them, they had to cross the street.
Yeah.
They literally had to cross the street and their eyes had to be down. They could not look at them.
Right.
And I'm just like, I can't even imagine. First of all, it's a natural instinct or reflex to just look at somebody. But this was detrimental to your health. This was a life and death
This is a
situation.
life, and so and this is where this is where I get angry because it's like, wait a minute, you have a movie coming out, a movie, it might be out by now, I don't even know because I refuse to watch them.
Hmm.
Emmett Till, right? You're making that
Wow.
something where people can watch it, and I get it. There are educational purposes for some of these things, but let me tell you something. I'm not watching it. Okay, I'm not doing it. I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm not doing it because at the end of the day you want me to have you put on film my people being lynched, my people being harassed, my people being murdered, and I'm supposed to go and I'm supposed to watch and I'm supposed to enjoy and I'm supposed to eat my popcorn and sip my soda and I'm supposed to come to work tomorrow and smile in your face and be
But see, now
someone else? You got to be kidding. You got to be kidding me.
well, yeah, but Emmett Till, I think some people need to watch, and I'll tell you why. First of all, it was his mother who did that. Now, what is even more disturbing is that they found the warrant that they were going to serve on the
Whew,
white woman who is still alive,
she is.
and nobody has served her with the warrant.
Let me tell you something. Look.
I'm just
I studied, no, I get it. I went through Africana studies. I've
right.
studied these things. I've read about these things. I've seen the pictures. I've been to the museum. I've seen the stuff, right?
Hmm.
But these people have turned it, all of it in one form or another, right? Into a means of something to watch and engage in a way that I'm not comfortable with,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
right,
I'm not comfortable with it. And
right,
so it's not for me, right?
right.
But this idea that we're supposed to sit back and watch these things, and look, she should be served the fact that this is even still a thing is just the most disturbing. You know what I mean? One of the most disturbing things,
It
right?
is.
All of
It
this should
is.
happen. I understand that. But we have turned, I mean, I taught a black I co-taught a black literature and history through film with a
Mm-hmm.
colleague of mine. And we would read a text and then we would watch the film adaptation, right? And discuss, the literary concepts through the literature and then how the film adaptation either, makes it stronger or whatever. And we read 12 Years a Slave, right? And
Oh,
then
girl.
okay. And so I'm
Ooh.
sitting in this room with these five white kids who are honor student, and I'm teaching this course with this other woman, who's a white woman, and we go to watch the film. And we watched, I think we watched that film independently. And then we
Mhm.
came together to talk about it. And I had to say to them, I said, look, I had nightmares. This is not, you know what I mean,
Right.
some random a conversation. This is not randomness. This is not some abstract film that's separate from me, right? And my being and my understanding of the world and my history. This is not separate. I don't get
Look,
to
we have
experience
one of
this.
our viewers who said, she says, I liken it to the lynching postcards.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay?
yes.
Yes.
There you go.
I'm not doing it. And I had to explain to them. I only did it because I wanted to be able to discuss it with them in this setting, in this classroom for educational purposes. Otherwise, I'm not doing it. Enough. Right? But on
Yeah.
top of that, this is what I'm saying. It's compounded, right? These
Mm-hmm.
films are created, right? They're blockbuster, commercialized, and I'm not talking necessarily about Emmett Till. I'm talking
Right.
about, 12 Years a Slave. I'm
Yeah.
talking about, and I understand that people take in content in different ways. They learn
True.
history through different, you know what I mean, through different
Right.
things. I get that. But you telling me I'm supposed to go watch this film about Harriet Tubman, okay? Or watch this film about 12 Years Later, or watch this film, and I'm supposed to come to work and you want me to figure out how to lower my voice? Give me a break. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Oh yeah, because 12 Years a Slave was way too much. Every time I think about it, I get mad. I cannot see that movie again. I'm
Ever,
just
ever again. I saw it
like,
once, that was enough. And
mm-mm.
I can pinpoint the images
Me
that stay
too.
with me. You want to talk about trauma, right? You want to talk about re traumatization,
Ooh, wish they beat
right?
her, girl.
Please. Or when they were
Mm.
literally him, this man, I have to go there because it angers me
He's
every
in
single
there,
time. This man being hung, but not enough to kill him, but enough to
but
keep him in
yeah,
place. And these people, the world just going on around him while he's
right,
teetering between life and death.
and right.
And I'm supposed to go home and say, "Wow, that was a great movie, 4 stars," and then go to
No,
work. And you
right.
ask me, "Could you, I'm not sure your hair is the most professional that it could be." Like I can't do it. Can't do it.
Right, 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 right.
Can't do it.
Yeah, yeah. Even Roots. One of our viewers, she said Roots was too much for her too. She can't watch it either.
I
So, yeah.
got through. I made it a part of one of the courses I taught. Regularly when I was teaching, I would teach African American literature, and I taught, through the slave narratives. I didn't show them the whole thing, and I didn't watch the whole thing because I couldn't make it. The newer version, the updated version,
Mm-hmm.
um, the dramatization of the transatlantic slave trade. I was like, okay, I'm
Right.
done.
Yeah.
I can't do this. This is,
It's
and I,
different when you
again,
know it.
again, it's important to understand the reality of the situation and to understand what happened. These people should know, they should see, they should understand, right? But I know I don't need to see.
Right. There
Okay,
you go.
and I don't need to see it that way to remember it and to remember what my people went through. Okay,
Yeah.
I
You're
don't.
like me. I mean, there are certain areas, like I was riding through Mississippi with a friend girl, and I swear to God, coming through one of those dark roads, and there's nothing but those trees on both sides, and all I could hear is like drums from 450 years ago. It's just like,
Oh,
this is where
yes,
they hung us.
yes.
I was just like, she's like, what's the matter? I said, I just feel so sad and heartbroken. I said, because I know they're here and they have hung. It's just like Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit,
Yeah.
just hanging from the trees, girl. And I'm just like, I don't know how you could even stay down here. Like,
I said that to a friend. We were driving through. We were in Maryland.
mm-hmm,
And I've been through the deep south. I have family deep south.
mm-hmm.
And I said, you guys don't feel that? I was like, you don't feel how haunted these spaces are, these woods are? I said, no one can convince me that black people don't feel that. When we walk into these spaces, we feel it, we know. It's
Well,
a
we don't go into
feeling.
the woods, okay?
Well, one thing,
We
we don't go into the woods. But
we're not going hunting with you either, okay? There'll be no mistaken shots, boo. None of
no,
that.
right?
Uh-uh.
But when, we were driving through and I was like, you see some pictures and you're like, I know
Right,
what
right,
happened there, right? You know
right.
what happened
You
there.
just feel
And
it.
you know what's really interesting is that I think that that's really related to the topic too,
Yeah,
right? That's a part of your blackness. That's a part
it
of
is.
understanding who you are. It's a part of your understanding your history in this place. How do you manage that? How
Yeah.
do you manage the sorrow? How do you manage the trauma? How do you manage, you know, all of the things that come with that?
Oh yeah, girl. I mean, I
Yeah.
still get incensed down here every now and then. They'll have some crazy person will have an antebellum party. Like
Oh
that
God.
was such, and I'm like, seriously, dressing up like Gone with the Wind. I don't know nothing about birthing no babies. No, no.
Absolutely not.
I'm
And
like,
see, here's the thing. This is what's really interesting to me is that really what's happened is that people are getting upset because we're calling that stuff out. People are getting
exactly.
upset because we're saying, "What are you doing? Do you not understand? Could you please do you please?" Right? We're not even begging anymore. We're saying absolutely not. That is
Girl,
inappropriate. We're not standing for it, right?
exactly.
And that's really what we're dealing with. People are
And
like, "They're making me question."
right, right, right. And I'm like, really? Throwing them
You're
out your
enjoying
question.
this? You know what I mean? You're
Exactly. And it's just like my husband and I were watching this program one night, and the white man said, he said, well, our niggers are happy niggers.
yes.
They stay in their place, they come to work, they go home, and they're not loud and all over the place. And I'm just like, see, first of all, you refer to them as our niggers.
Ownership.
Yes. In 1956.
Mhm.
I'm like, mm-mm, mm-mm, mm-mm,
But see,
mm-mm.
to me, right, at the end of the day, and this is connected to a conversation too, right? They were you could let's say they were happy. Let's say that this lie that they didn't put out there, our slaves, ours, they were happy people. We fed them and we gave them a place to stay, and you know what I mean? Yeah, we raped them every once in a while, but we took care of them,
Girl,
right?
look,
Let me
how
tell you
is
something.
enslaved and rape? That's an oxymoron. Or
Okay,
enslaved and
thank you.
happy,
But
an
what I'm telling,
oxymoron.
right? But what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, they would have given it all up for their freedom. They
Yes, they
wanted their
would have.
freedom more than they
More than
wanted you,
anything.
right, to think of them in any way. They wanted their
Right.
freedom. And that's what this comes down to for me. Where are you finding freedom in your blackness? Where are you allowing yourself to be free? Because
That's
all of
it.
these constraints are all about conforming to a structure we were never meant to make it through. We were never meant to be a part of.
Because it was never designed for us or intended
It
for us
wasn't
in the
designed.
beginning.
It never
From the
was.
beginning. It never
So
was.
what are you really doing? What are you really doing to yourself? Because at this point you're aiding and abetting, right? Because now, and that's the
Ooh.
really interesting part about it, right? Because now when you have black people in higher up in situations and leadership positions who are oppressing people of color below them, they're just upholding the structure,
Yes. And they
right?
are. They are.
They do
But they're
it.
dying on the inside because they're talking about it to their friends and everybody else, but they are trying to maintain this image and this facade about what it is and how it should be. When it never really was. It
This
never really was.
It never really was. It wasn't meant for us. I spent a lot of time. I taught English and writing courses for a long time. And I had to really stop and think about how it is that I was a part of a structure that was oppressing
Hmm.
my people. And when I say my people, I don't necessarily just mean black people. I mean poor people. I mean people of color, I mean marginalized groups,
Exactly.
right?
Right.
And how these structures trying to make them all sound the same, particularly in writing, particularly in language, right?
Yes.
And I had to stop and say, look, I'm not doing this anymore. How you want to show up in this room is your decision. And I'm going to grade you based on the work that you do and how authentic you feel you are being in any given situations. What do you want to learn how to do?
See?
Right? What do you want to be your best in? Do you want to better understand how English standard grammar works so you can make a decision about when you're going to use it and when you aren't?
Hmm.
Right? So
Right.
I can help you do those things, but I don't want you to ever think that who you are, who you decide to show up as in this space is less than anyone else.
Boom. That's it
Right?
right there. That's it right there, girl. That is it. Well, Queen Alicia, you have educated, empowered, and elevated us to the next level, baby. I mean, this has just been awesome. I
It's been a
mean,
lot of
we've
fun.
had an
Yeah.
engaging audience where people are typing in stuff and I'm trying to read and be like, okay,
Yeah.
okay, but yes, this was a conversation that needed to be had. And there was nobody designated for such a task as this than you, baby. Nobody. But
Thank
I
you.
thank you. You have been an awesome, awesome guest. And you guys, if you need to reach her, reach out and how can they reach you? Because they got questions.
Well, that's a really good question. I guess my email address?
Yes, email.
Email? Yeah, my email address.
Okay.
That's a great way to get in contact with me.
Okay.
And I can
Well,
give that
if
to
you
you if
guys
you
want to
want.
reach her, you're
Yeah.
welcome to. You can email me, and I will send you the information and how to reach her. She's an excellent, fabulous speaker, especially when it comes to blackness. Baby, she is all that and then some, and some other things. She's just super talented and super gifted, and we love her. And Queen, thank you so much for being on her story because you so rock, girl. You just like,
Thank
I
you
mean,
so
everybody
much.
who's on here has not left. Okay, this is like great conversation, ladies.
Yeah.
Because this is the real stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is the stuff that we need to hear and that we all think about,
Hmm.
and try to figure out what the heck, what the hell.
Yeah.
So this was great. And I thank you so much. You were
Thank you
awesome,
for having
girlfriend.
me.
And I will talk with you soon.
Definitely.
All right.
Take
Bye bye now.
care. Thank
You
you.
too. Bye bye now.
Bye.
Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to her story. Um, Queen Alicia Richardson was just like off the chain, awesome, and just kicking that knowledge like it was nobody's business, and very engaging and very personable. And we love her. So, like I said, tune into her story next week. We'll be back here next week, and we'll have another hot topic for you with another hot guest. In the meantime, go over to herstory.agency, write your comments, let us know, and don't forget to go to Spotify or Anchor, Apple or Google to check out the podcast and make sure you subscribe. And again, I'm Kimberly Pinkston with Her Story. It has been my pleasure. You guys have a great rest of your weekend. Good night.